The ultrasound gel was still warm on her stomach when the doctor suddenly froze. Her smile vanished. Her hand trembled slightly. Then she looked at me, not my wife, me. "Mr. Mercer," she said, her voice tight, "can I speak to you privately?" I glanced at Camille. She looked confused but nodded. I followed the doctor into the hallway, and the moment the door shut behind us, she whispered, "You need to leave your wife. Right now." "What the hell are you talking about?" "There's no time to explain," she said. "But when you see this, you'll understand." She turned her monitor toward me and pointed. This fetus is 14 weeks old." "Okay," I said cautiously. She stared into me. "Jason, your wife is only 10 weeks pregnant according to her own blood work and the last cycle date she gave us." The silence in my ears was deafening. The math punched me in the stomach. I hadn't been with Camille in 14 weeks. I was overseas until 9 weeks ago. My hands tightened into fists. "She didn't miscalculate. She lied," the doctor said gently. "And you deserve to know." I walked back into the room, heart pounding, and looked at Camille. She smiled at me like nothing happened. I sat beside her and pretended to smile back. But behind my eyes, something inside me had already started to crack open. And the first word that came to mind was DNA. Camille hummed softly beside me as we drove home. Like nothing had happened. Like the doctor hadn't just exposed the ugliest lie I'd ever heard. "Babe," she said, brushing her hair back with one hand, "wasn't that amazing? Seeing our baby for the first time?" I nodded once, eyes fixed on the road. "Yeah. Amazing." Inside I was unraveling. I replayed the weeks, the overseas trip, the nights I FaceTimed her while she claimed to be exhausted, the sudden nausea she blamed on bad takeout. It wasn't food poisoning. It was morning sickness. And I had been congratulating myself on becoming a father. When we got home, she went to lie down. I went straight to the study and locked the door. I ordered an at-home paternity test. It would take days, maybe a week. But I knew the answer already. Still, I needed confirmation. Over the next few days, I played my part. I held her hand during appointments, made her tea, kissed her forehead. She smiled, giggled, texted her friends excitedly. She thought she'd won. Until the envelope arrived. I waited until dinner. Set the test results gently beside her plate. "Jason, what's this?" I looked her dead in the eye. "It's the truth." She opened it. And her face turned white. Then red. Then something colder. "You went behind my back?" I leaned forward. "You did that first." And I hadn't even told her what I planned to do next. Camille pushed the paper away like it burned her. "This doesn't mean anything," she hissed. "These tests can be wrong." "They're 99.99% accurate," I replied calmly. "But you're welcome to explain who the father is, since it sure as hell isn't me." She stood up, voice rising. "You're overreacting, Jason. I didn't want to lose you," I panicked. "So you what? You got pregnant with someone else's kid and thought I'd raise it blindly?" Tears welled up, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. My world had been flipped inside out, and I wasn't looking for sympathy, I was looking for clarity. "Who is he?" I asked. Silence. Her jaw clenched. Then quietly, "It doesn't matter." "Oh, it matters," I said, stepping closer. "Because if you don't tell me, I'll find out myself. And trust me, Camille, I'll use it." I slept in the guest room that night. She sobbed behind the door, but I didn't go to her. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a man building a case. The next morning I called my lawyer. "Prenup still valid?" I asked. "Very," he said. "You want to move fast?" "Faster than she thinks." I had always been the calm one in our marriage. The easygoing guy who forgave too much and asked too little. But now I was quiet for a different reason. Because the only thing louder than anger is a man planning justice in silence. Camille didn't say a word when I walked past her that morning. She sat curled up on the couch, makeup smeared, eyes puffy. But I wasn't moved. Not anymore. I left for work early, but I didn't go to the office. Instead, I drove to a private investigator I'd already contacted. Find out who she's been seeing. I want names, phone records, photos, everything. He nodded without a word and slid a contract across the table. That night I made dinner. Yes, I made dinner. She stared at me from across the table like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but not in the way she feared. "How's the baby?" I asked, calmly slicing my steak. She blinked. "You still care?" I smiled. "Of course I care. Just not the way you think." She pushed her plate away. "Jason, can we just go back to before? We were happy." "No," I cut in, tone soft but final. We weren't. I was loyal. You were a good actress. Her lip trembled. I thought he'd leave her, but then I found out I was pregnant. And you're stable. You're kind. My hands froze. She used me. The next morning the investigator called. Got something you'll want to see. I met him in a diner parking lot. He handed me a brown envelope. Inside, photos. Him. Smiling. Holding hands. In my backyard. And that's when I knew, this wasn't about divorce anymore. It was about exposing them both. Publicly. Permanently. I stared at the photo of Camille laughing beside a man I had never met, but in my backyard on my patio furniture wearing my college sweatshirt. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was territorial. She desecrated my peace. The investigator handed me a name, Brian Keller. Divorced. Mid-30s. Works in marketing. Known for sleeping around the office. But here's the real kicker. He was Camille's boss. I almost laughed. She always said she hated people who mixed work and personal life. Yet here she was, playing house in my backyard with the guy who signs her paychecks. That night I didn't confront her. I watched. I observed how she texted with a smile when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed how she avoided eye contact when I asked about work. I took notes. I compiled timestamps. Then I called Brian's company's anonymous HR line. I sent them everything. Every photo, every date and time she claimed to be at work, while clearly being somewhere else with him. I knew corporate HR couldn't ignore a paper trail that clean. 3 days later, Camille came home pale and silent. What's wrong? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She sat down slowly. I got suspended, pending an investigation. I blinked. Really? Over what? She looked at me, eyes wide. I think someone reported me for something fake. I leaned back, nodded slowly. That's awful, I said. But inside I was just getting started. Next it was Brian's turn. Brian Keller's downfall started with one email. I didn't write it as myself. I created a fake identity using a burner address. Claimed to be a concerned intern. Attached screenshots of texts between him and Camille, camouflaged just enough to look like they came from a real phone backup. Then I sent the email to his company's HR, marked confidential. Within 48 hours, Camille noticed something was off. Brian isn't answering my calls, she muttered while scrolling her phone. He's ghosting me. I poured my coffee. Weird. Everything okay at work? Her eyes narrowed. You always ask that lately. I shrugged. Just making conversation. She didn't speak for the rest of breakfast. By evening she was pacing. He's been suspended, she said, voice cracking. There's a rumor someone reported us. Why would they do that? I asked. She turned, eyes searching mine. Jason, did you? I tilted my head. Me? You think I'd do something like that? She didn't answer. I could see it, the seed of doubt taking root in her mind, twisting tighter with every passing hour. The next morning I received a call from Brian's wife. Yes, his wife. She'd gotten my contact info through a mutual friend of hers and Camille's, apparently unaware that I already knew everything. He's gone, she told me. I filed for divorce. Then she said, but I think you should know what Camille's been hiding from you. I froze mid-step. What do you mean? She exhaled. She was never pregnant. I couldn't breathe. She was never pregnant, Brian's wife repeated, her voice tight. She faked the whole thing. I found texts. She was stringing you along for the house, your money, your last name. I lowered myself onto the steps in my garage. She told Brian she'd get half your assets once she married you, she added. That's why he played along. He thought he'd benefit too. My mind spun. All those late-night cravings, the baby books, her pretending to cry during commercials. It was all a performance. For what? Bigger paycheck? A nice backyard? I thanked Brian's wife and hung up. I stayed in the garage for an hour. And then I moved. I printed every fake ultrasound I had paid for. I copied every sweet message she sent me about our little miracle. And I sent them all to her job's ethics board. With one note, she faked a pregnancy for financial gain from her fiancé and boss. Both are now under investigation. Consider what this says about her moral fitness. They suspended her within a day. Camille came home screaming, accusing, sobbing. What are you doing to me? I stayed calm. I simply said, you played with my trust. I'm just returning the favor. She was fired the same week Brian finalized his divorce. But I wasn't done. One thing kept me awake every night. She drugged me the night she claimed we conceived. And that meant her lies had crossed into something much darker. Now it was time for justice. I booked a private consultation with a legal investigator, quiet, thorough, and experienced in digital forensics. I handed him my phone, Camille's laptop backups, and the dates I suspected she drugged me. 3 weeks later he returned with proof. See this, he pointed at a deleted pharmacy receipt in her email. This pill, zolpidem. Used to sedate. Prescribed under her cousin's name, picked up by her. My throat tightened. And this? He pulled up a journal entry she wrote in her notes app. If Jason ever leaves, I'll say he hit me. I just need 2 bruises. That was the moment I knew I had to go all the way. With my lawyer's help, I filed a criminal case, not just for fraud but for covert drugging and coercive abuse. The DA took interest. It escalated. Camille was arrested. I still remember the disbelief on her face when the cuffs clicked on. You can't do this to me, she screamed in court. I stood calmly. You already did it to yourself. She was sentenced to 14 months probation, a suspended jail term, and mandatory therapy. Brian resigned under pressure. His wife got full custody. As for me, I moved cities. Started a new job. No more mansions, no more luxury distractions. Just peace and a dog I named Mercy. But sometimes at night I hear her voice again in my head. Fake soft. Sweet lies. And I remind myself, silence isn't peace if it's paid for with your sanity.